We're live.
Oh, Kim, you're on mute.
And I unmuted myself. I don't
And
know
you
what
have a
happened.
special guest
Thank
today.
you. All right, let's try this again. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Dojo Live, Wednesday, the 17th of July, 2019, where we have informative, informal, and fun conversations with tech luminaries. My name is Kim Lentis. I'm broadcasting live from my home. This one came down with a cough today, and of course, she wants to join in on the fun, so disclaimer there. Joining me are my two co-workers and co-hosts, Carlos Ponce. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Kim.
And then you, Tulio, who already introduced yourself, Tulio Siragusa. And here's Zoe. She's waving. So today we're going to be talking about how to develop our data literacy. And here to tell us how to do just that is the Amazon best-selling book author behind her book is Behind Every Good Decision. And she's also president and CEO of Aring. So please welcome Piyanka Jain. Welcome to Dojo Live, Piyanka.
Hi, Kim.
Hi. So
Glad to
Piyanka
be.
is, and Zoe, she's waving again. So I have to say, Piyanka, I feel both honored and a bit intimidated to be speaking with you today. I would invite you to please share a bit more about yourself so that our listeners can also and viewers can also understand why I might be feeling this way. So tell us
Oh,
about
okay.
yourself.
Well, there is no reason to be intimidated, Kim. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm excited for what unfolds today. My background, real quick. I have a two master's degree from academia, so coming from academia with a quants and math background, and then found myself in the real world of Adobe's and PayPal's of the world, and that's where I really understood, how to take all that quantitative and mathematics learning that I had, and apply it to solve real business problems. There were two different kinds of world, and I've slowly realized how to bridge that gap. And through that process of learning how to apply data-driven thinking, how to apply simple math, how to apply more advanced statistical and machine learning techniques to solve complex problems, is how my own journey of data literacy started. And that's what I hope that I would share with you. In terms of just adding to my my background, I speak internationally on the topic of data-driven decision making and data literacy and data culture. And I have a couple of books. One of them you mentioned already, Behind Every Good Decision, is just became Amazon bestseller this year. So lucky to have that. And what else? And then, of course, with Airing, our work is primarily focused on, we are a SWAT team of sorts, so we go in and solve complex problems. Like some company, is having high value problem, whether it is, onboarding issues, or the fraud model is not working, or the growth is growth is not, is sort of diminishing. EBITDA is not looking good, or margins are going down. So these are the kind of big problems that we go in and solve with our data science consulting service. And on the data culture aspect, there are many mature organizations which are our clients who want to be Facebook like, or Google's like, right? They want to be able to think and act data, and we help with that transition along with the data literacy work. We also have an academy online on airing.com, where anybody who's interested in learning or getting skilled up in data science can go and take certifications and programs.
Hey, Kim,
Thank
sorry
you.
for the quick interruption. I apologize for those who are tuned in on LinkedIn. We had an interruption on the live broadcast. I rebroadcasted it. And if you want to watch the entire interview uninterrupted for this session, you can go on nearsoft.dojo.com and you'll be able to do that. Back to you, Kim. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Tulio. So, yeah, the show must go on as we've proven today. So, Piyanka, I was going to ask you about Aring and your product and services, but you already went ahead and answered that for us very well. So, you said something, I heard you say data culture, and I'm wondering, could you go into a bit of that detail of what is a data culture? What does it mean to be data driven? And why is that important for companies?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'm just coming back from an event, C event, where I was, where I keynoted in front of 300 executives on which were in the hospitality and event business, and that's exactly what my topic was as well. Why do we even care? Why is this culture of data important? Now, let's go back, like let's say 200, 300 years ago, and let's say we are all entrepreneurs as business makers. 300 years ago, we all had our, if we were all businesses, we would know each of our customers, right? Because we would, probably shake hands with them, and I probably was selling wool or, whatever else, and you were probably selling something, some of those spices or goods, and we would know each other. In today's world, a digital world, we have millions of customers and we don't know them face to face. And how are we building products and services if we don't know them, if we don't know their needs? The only way for us to know that or understand their needs and build products to serve that need is through understanding what the data can tell us about those million people. How are those million customers, what are they doing on our website, or what are they doing on our product? How are they using our product? Which features do they prefer more versus less? What are the different use cases they are using our products for? And so on. So there are many, many use cases from that perspective. The other thing which is also now added, not only the human aspect, but devices, IoT devices are producing sensors, devices are producing data. And now we have the ability, imagine, oil and mine, Chevron, ExxonMobil, right? Thousands and thousands of these devices, even the pipes or the machineries, different parts, pressure gauges, the heat valves, everything is now basically a smart device. And so they are outputting data, and instead of having to figure out, something goes wrong in that this oil gig, something goes wrong, it takes you days, weeks, months to figure out what went wrong. Now it's a matter of, if you're on top of the data, it's a matter of you figuring out in a matter of maybe hours where things are leaking, where is something going on, what is going on, and then like fixing it. So data, being able to leverage data is very, very important. Now, organizations who have a culture of data are able to think and act data, which means it's not just the responsibility of the data managers to be able to, oh, now that something is wrong, let's me look at the data, and these small percentage of people, 1%, 2% of the organization who is able to do something with data. Well, that was the world 20 years ago when, people like me, we were, data scientists or analysts in the world of Adobe or PayPal. When big problems happened, PayPal went from, for a particular product, went from 2-digit growth to single-digit growth. They would come to people like us and say, hey, what's going on? Let's figure this out. In the new world, we all are part analysts. We are all citizen analysts because we all have access to data. Now, people don't need to depend on people like me or my team who at that point was writing SQL to get access to data. Now everybody has access to data thanks to Power BI and Tableau. And that means we all are citizen analysts. That means we all should be able to think and act data to different degrees, but we should all be able to think and act data and use it. So if something were to happen to your campaign that you ran, we should be able to do something with it. So
that's the idea of the data culture. So
yes,
basically, you're working yourself out of a job by allowing us all to do what you do.
Well, surprisingly, I'm not. I'm empowering myself and others by empowering others who are able to do this, which is one of the core things we do at Airing. We are able to together collaborate. If, for example, if you were my internal stakeholder, Kim, and if you understand that data can be leveraged in these ways, then your usage of data, your usage of models would be much higher. And currently, that's what we are struggling with, right? Companies who are already started on that path, they're struggling with that aspect.
It's a really, really beautiful sentiment. I think this is something that we at Nearsoft can kind of relate to a lot. This idea of we're a flat organization and we're all based on teamwork. And so I think this really rings home to us, and this idea that we want everybody to be involved in the decision making and the ideas and the process. But I do have to think, when I personally think of data analysis, I'm thinking of big data, and to me, this can be really overwhelming, not even knowing exactly where to start. And I think it maybe might feel, I'm sorry, that's Zoe shouting.
That's okay.
Might liken it to failing to see the forest for the trees, right? So how can we break this down? It's my understanding after what I've read about you is this idea of we can start with 2 simple questions. Is that right?
3 simple questions, but yes.
3? Okay.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
are they?
yeah, you were close. I think I'm going to wrap one thought around what I was just trying to get to from the data culture perspective. But the companies who are not going to, it's given what I'm seeing, the companies who are not going to pay attention or not going to be able to use data as a key asset in the organization are going to be irrelevant very, very soon. So the companies who want to stay competitive actually want to stay in the business, need to pay attention and need to develop an internal data culture. So think and act data for everybody. So that's what, one thing I wanted to wrap on. Now, to your point, like how can everybody become data scientists or be able to deal with big data? It's overwhelming. Thankfully, we are talking about data culture and data literacy, we're talking about stratified. So, for example, for you, Kim, if you were my internal stakeholder, you should be able to, and let's say you were in marketing, you should be able to launch campaigns, look at the results of the campaigns, and make meaningful conclusions from that to be able to use it for your next campaign, right? And if I'm your stakeholder, internal stakeholder, I'm supporting you, you should be, for the 80% of the problems you should be able to solve yourself, which can be done using aggregate data, which is not big data, aggregated data. And you should be able to use simple tools like Excel or Power BI or Tableau. Simple tools, simple methodologies, correlation analysis, aggregate analysis, trending, simple methodologies, simple tools, simpler. I won't say that this is like, you still need to kind of sort of know what you're doing, but that can be done by just using these simpler methodologies. 80% of the problems that you would encounter should be solved. It could be solved that way. Now, there will be the rest.
Pia, if you don't mind, I want to interject real quick here. So it sounds very similar to my first book in 2009. I made a prediction about how social media and data science was going to change the landscape of business. And it's amazing how it's already happening. But my question is a little bit more about your business, where your focus is. One of the things I've observed over the past decade is the proliferation of data science, big data, even AI. Really, it's about simplifying it, right? So from my perspective, it's about 2 things. One, it's workflow automation, which impacts machine to machine. And as you mentioned earlier, detection of problems, problem resolution, where you have sensor information that can help either with R&D or can help predict a problem, or in some cases avoid a problem. So that's that world of the IoT space. And then you have smart workforces, right? It's the ability to use information to enable someone to make decisions. I always equate it to the junior hire can now act and provide services to a client like a senior person, because they have access to distilled information that has some context that empowers them to do more. Which of these 2 is your company focused on? If you could tell us a little bit about your business, what marketplace you're serving and what problem you're solving, we'd love to hear that as well.
Sure. I mean, we span the breadth of strategic data science consulting. So we are often in boardrooms and executive rooms, working with the executives on figuring out what their organizational structure can be, should be, helping them think through the data culture aspect, also center of excellence aspect, all the way very, very strategic to all the way to identifying the top analytics project, top agenda. How do you move? How are you going to make a motion towards better margins for the organization or driving growth, and identifying top projects and then actually working on it with all the toolkits we have. Sometimes simple logic is enough. Sometimes you have to get into machine learning and deep learning. And sometimes, the company has the wherewithal and infrastructure to even support AI, right? So we have the sort of, our work sort of spans the breadth of strategic data science consulting to more specific project-based, building a fraud model and improving that fraud capture by 10%, right? So that's the breadth, as well as in terms of working with the executives on building their own data literacy, their own understanding of how the organization can be organized to build a culture of data, all the way down to teaching an individual data scientist how can they be more effective, to even citizen analysts. We have data literacy certification as well as citizen analyst certification, where we go in and empower these people to solve big problems in their workflow. while we teach them. So it sort of spans the breadth of what you're, I think what
I'm hearing it's about smart workforces or smart enterprises. What are you seeing in terms of adoption across organization? Are companies adopting these strategies to get smart about how they work and how they operate? Or are you seeing some resistance? What's been your experience so far in terms of adoption?
In terms of adoption of data as an asset, or what is specifically adoption of what?
Well, you mentioned earlier that some of the strategic projects you work on help organizations make better decisions. To me,
Yeah.
that's smart workforces, smart enterprises, right?
Yeah.
What's the adoption been?
Yeah.
The organization adopting these tools and this intelligence to
Yeah.
make better decisions, or
Right.
companies moving in that direction at a rapid pace, or some still resistant, trying to do things the old-fashioned way, where there's a lot of more analysts doing the work instead of
Yeah.
actually. So what have
Where's
you?
the world looking like right now? So
Right.
it varies by industry. Some industries are sort of behind the curve, and the other, like financial services and insurance, are way ahead on the curve. But of course, you would think, but of course, even in the banking, there are like credit unions and the legacy banks which have legacy systems, so they are behind the curve. But technology is really ahead of the curve. CPG and retail are coming up. Hospitality and events tend to be a little bit behind. Manufacturing is catching up again from behind. So I think it depends on the industry as well as function. I think overall, though, like end of 2018, Gartner came out with a report that 85% of data science projects actually are wasted, which means it doesn't drive any impact. And after 10 years of big data hullabaloo and data science hullabaloo, it's like, what? 85%, like, 15% of work actually gets used. And I would say, by some estimate and my own estimate of having seen what's internally, I would say really 2 to 3% of work really gets used. And so why that big of a gap? Like 100, you put you have basically 100 races, you will send 100 races to the 100 horses to your race, and actually 2 complete. Like, what happened to the 98, right? What really, this is really such a in this whole dichotomy of the world where we need data, we have data, and it's not really being used or leveraged. The miss is basically misunderstanding of data science, missing engagement model, missing data literacy, right? If there's you can build the best insights, but let's say, again, going back to my model, let's say Kim is my internal stakeholder, and I actually just built the best customer acquisition model to reduce the customer acquisition cost from $5 to $2. But if Kim does not necessarily believe in this, or if I am not aligned with Kim, or there's a data literacy is not there, she and her team will probably never use that, and my work has again gone to waste. And that is what is happening in the real world. And so it's really like a lot of these different pieces, and that's why our work is so pivotal. Our data culture work actually brings up the data literacy for the entire organization, so that the entire organization works together in tandem to push this big rock of growth, of acquisition, of profitability in the same direction. I hope this answers it.
So increasing that data literacy, I think you were going back and you were talking about this idea of powering, and we were going to discuss 3 questions that we can ask ourselves to increase our data literacy and our own empowerment. Can we get back to that? Like, what are those questions?
Yeah, so the 3 key questions is another framework, and people who are interested, they can go to aiding.com and find that white paper as well. And we talk about, there are 3 key questions to ask your data as you begin your journey, because data doesn't speak. We often think like, oh, let me build this dashboard, the best of it, and shake it, and then it'll start speaking to me all these intelligent things that, again, will tell me to do this and do that. Actually, data doesn't speak. It only responds to intelligent questions. I mean, if you ask garbage question, you'll get garbage out, garbage in, garbage out. So it's about asking important questions, relevant questions to your data. So the 3 key questions is actually a framework which starts with, the first question is, how am I doing? First question is, how do you even measure success for yourself? And for different organizations, it'll be different metrics. But then you should have clarity on what is the key metric for your organization, right? So how am I doing is the first question. Second is, what drives how am I doing, right? So what is, using your portfolio analysis or whatever else, understand what are the drivers. For example, if your key metric is revenue or growth, what are the drivers for the growth for your organization? It might be it's a function of new acquisition. It might be function of retention. It might be function of these different, competitive feature set that you're building. How am I doing? What is that, what drives how am I doing? So that's the second question. What drives how am I doing? And third is, what does my customer need and want, right? And if you understand that, and it's actually 3 questions, but it's actually layered 3 questions. You will keep going back to these 3 questions over and over until you figure out that measurement framework, until you figure out, hey, here's my lever, I turn this way, and here's how my top meter moves, right? It's like driving a car. I know if I push my pedal down, something happens, right? And different cars will have different degrees of movement based on how hard I push the pedal, or what do I, if I, how I do my steering. If I pull it this way, what happens? It turns right. So this is where, when you start understanding the different levers of your business, is when you start truly leveraging the power of data to drive yourself forward, to drive that growth forward. And many, many new tech companies, new and old tech companies, Capital One is a big example, Airbnb, Uber, these are amazing examples of where the organizations are truly leveraging data to drive their business forward.
Okay, so we have about 7 minutes left. Time flies. Anybody have any questions, please submit them on Twitter at Dojo Live. And Carlos, if there's any questions pending, please ask them now, and I'm going to pass it back to Kim, because I know she has a few more.
Yeah, so I was wondering, where's this threshold? You mentioned something about 80%, more than likely 80% of the work with data can be done on our own. So that means that 20% is going to need a company to handle, or somebody, or help to handle and utilize the more complex analytics. So where's that threshold? Like, when do we decide, okay, we need someone like Aaron? And also, what are the steps that we can take to do that wisely? I believe that you actually have a talk in an article that you wrote, something about how can we avoid being scammed. I think this scam was the word that you used.
Yes. And it is a big scam, and it goes back to the same 85% I was telling about, that 85% of the work goes wasted. And so for you, like, you wouldn't think of investing $300K or $1 million in a house and say, oh, there's an 85% chance that the house that you're buying may not be there. Oh, 15% chance that house, you would not do that. It's actually a scam, right? But over and over, organizations are doing that. They are investing millions of dollars in consulting, in projects, internal, external tools for that promise, which actually does not show up. So how do you do it right? The way you do it right is make sure that the executives are bought into projects, right? You make sure whether you're doing an internal project or an external project, when we are brought into a project, we make sure that we have the executives buy in. That's one of the things we always start with an assessment. And in that phase of assessment, we have a voice of executive. We actually work with executives to understand their different views. And one of the ways in which we add value is by aligning how different stakeholders are looking at even the problem, the common view of the problem. Because sometimes we go in and we say, there is a huge problem. We have an onboarding issue. 50% of the people, we are rejecting their application. We have a problem. Come solve it for us. We go in, and when we talk to the head of risk, they have a different view of the problem. Head of marketing has a different view of the problem. So one of the first things you have to do is align people on a common view of the problem. And then the next step is align people, all the stakeholders, on a common view of the solution. Because the way the IT would look at the problem, they would be optimizing from the infrastructure perspective. The way risk is looking at the problem, the way compliance is looking at the problem, the way product is looking, they're all looking from their vantage point. And so it's important to come up with a problem definition and a solution definition which aligns different stakeholders, because that's the only way this project will get adopted and actually get used, right? So align all the stakeholders together. Make sure that you have the support, the internal support. You have the data supporting it. You have the resources who are going to work on it supporting. In our case, we bring our resources to our client, but we also still need infrastructure internally for our clients to be able to. Let's say we built a very complex, gradient boosting 200 trees algorithm that improved fraud by, let's say, 25%. But if the organization is not able to actually instrument it on their end, that work is wasted. And I can't tell you how much work gets wasted because of misalignment of algorithm, misalignment of needs and requirements. And that's again, because we use a framework like Badr, our work does not get wasted because we align on those things early on with the stakeholders. But that's another thing to align on and make sure that your work does not get wasted.
It sounds like technology for the sake of technology is not the way to go. I remember, I think 20 years ago, a lot of companies started doing ERP implementations and supply chain implementation, and they implemented the software out of the box, and 70% of those things failed because there was no alignment with the business objectives. So it's refreshing to hear that there needs to be alignment with the business objectives. So all these projects that have failed, 85% of them have failed, what's the advice you have? We have like 3 minutes left. What's the advice or wisdom you want to share for those organizations that might be scorched earth in terms of having spent a lot of money and not gotten the results? How could they relook at this differently?
I think we look at completely, you need data maturity for sure. Definitely invest in giving access to everybody, easy and clean access to a single source of truth. That's number one, data maturity, invest in data maturity. Second, invest in data literacy. That means it's not necessarily just training, but invest in different parts of your organization needing the required amount of data literacy so everybody can start moving in tandem towards those common goals. If it is growth, we know if I'm working in marketing, I should know how my work drives the growth for the organization. So all of that alignment, data literacy, the leadership has to align. So data-driven leaders are a must. That's the starting point for a culture to actually, for an organization to get the ROI. And the fourth part of this sort of 4 Ds of data culture is decision-making process. If you don't have a way in which you make decisions, and you don't have a way to look back on those decisions and actually understand and learn from it, you will not necessarily be able to leverage data or anything towards that decision making and learn from it. So you can only they say you can only manage what you can measure, and thereby having a decision making process is key. So the 4 Ds is what I'm going to leave you with. It's making sure you have data maturity. Data literacy is a must. Data driven decision making is the 3 key component, and all of it is sort of started by and catalyzed by data-driven leadership. Hopefully this is useful.
Great, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Wish we had a little more time. Kim, you have anything to wrap up?
I don't. It was extremely enlightening, and thank you very much. If anybody, so I'm sorry. So we just want to make sure for those who are listening, it's Aryng, right? ARYNG is your company, and thank you so much, Piyanka, Jain, for your time today and your beautiful insights in helping make companies better.
Yes, pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day. And see you next week on Dojo Live.
Thank you so much, Piyanka. I'm going to send you an updated version of the landing page. And for any contact info, if you're watching and want to get a hold of Piyanka and her company, it'll all be there on the Dojo Live website. And as far as I'm concerned, Piyanka, thank you so much for having accepted the invitation to be here with us today. And we're going to be in touch.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.